So this is a commission piece for a new client who has some old furniture that's been sitting in a barn for years. She said it's not valuable, but does hold sentimental value as they're inherited pieces, and she would like to have them restored. I decided to start with one of the smaller pieces just to get started. It's a sweet little end table, mostly walnut. The legs and the moldings are solid walnut, and the sides are just plywood covered with walnut veneer. So let's get started. I started by blowing off most of the dust and cobwebs using my husband's leaf blower. This is the easiest part of the entire process, I'm telling you. Next, I give the whole piece inside and out a thorough scrub using a degreaser, a scrubby pad, and some clean water. This is how I begin all my furniture flips. It removes all the dust, grime, old furniture polish, and wax, so your new finish will have a clean surface to stick to. Especially when you're sanding, you don't want to neglect this step and rub grime into your wood grain. Plus, I use this opportunity to give the furniture a thorough once-over, identifying any repairs that will need to be made. The veneer on one side was buckling and had pulled away from the substrate. I used a syringe filled with Titebond wood glue and injected plenty of glue between the two layers. This is actually the second syringe of glue that I had used. After this, I used a putty knife to push the glue back and to smooth it out more evenly between the two layers. After this, I wiped back all the excess glue. I put a board down on this and then set a 35-pound weight on it to push the veneer back down onto the substrate and left it to dry overnight. I did end up putting a piece of parchment paper between the board and the end table to keep the board from getting glued to the piece due to any squeezed out glue. Repair number 1, check. My customer really wanted to save as much of the original veneer as possible. That was doable on the sides, inside and out. However, the top of this was really in bad shape. Almost all of the veneer had separated from the plywood substrate. There was no way to re-glue all of it down, and along the edges the veneer was worn so thin it was like tissue paper. So I made the decision that the best thing to do was to remove it. Ultimately, this will give the piece the most longevity, and trying to salvage that original veneer would not give my client the results she wants. It came off so easily, it was ready to retire, I believe. The old finish had failed, and it was just flaking off so easily it didn't make any sense to use a chemical stripper. Chemical strippers can be great, and I've definitely used them, but they are expensive, they're messy, and in this case, totally unnecessary. So I got out my little scraper tool and started scraping away. I scraped the finish off this entire piece, and then I hand sanded it with a 120 grit sandpaper, and then followed that up by a 240 grit. It's tedious but rewarding. I mean, look at that beautiful walnut grain. So then when you compare it to the other leg that hasn't been scraped or sanded yet, you can really appreciate the difference a little TLC makes. The inside of the shelf had some loose veneer that I glued and weighted down. While I was waiting for that to dry, I decided to address that black stain on the shelf. I'd originally thought that it was a paint stain, but no such luck. After scraping the finish away, I saw that it was actually an ink stain that had soaked into the grain of the wood. So enter oxalic acid. Oxalic acid is a cleaning agent. It's an ingredient in Barkeeper's Friend. And if a stain isn't bad, you can actually use Barkeeper's Friend using this method. But for something this bad, like an ink stain, it's best to just use straight up oxalic acid. You can buy this on Amazon. Just use some warm water and mix in several spoonfuls of the powder. I just keep adding it and stirring it until it no longer dissolves. If it all dissolves, add another spoonful. But do make sure that you wear gloves and a mask or respirator when you use it. For me, it's July and it's Mississippi, and I have a fan going, so I don't want to risk inhaling any of the powder. I just use a chip brush and I paint it onto the entire surface where the stain is. You can't just paint over the stain, because then you'll have a light spot and you will never be able to blend that in. I paint it on liberally and then I set it in the sun to dry, and it will lighten. It's going to dry and crystallize. If your stain is still there, paint on another coat. The most I ever do is 3 coats, because after 3, the acid is done all it's going to do. And I did 3 coats here. It lightened the stain some, but it didn't completely remove it. Afterwards, rinse the acid off thoroughly with warm water, still making sure to wear your gloves and a respirator, and rinse it very thoroughly. After letting this dry, I went over the entire piece again, sanding every surface as smooth as possible, then wiped down with a damp microfiber cloth to remove any sanding dust. One thing that is such a pet peeve of mine is what you see on the bottom of this little table. Whoever stained this when it was originally made just allowed excess stain and lacquer to run underneath and then left this mess on the underside. I just think it looks messy. I like something that looks intentional and neatly finished. So I went to Lowe's and bought this little paint sample. They'll make it any color you choose, so I got a nice chocolate brown. It will look good, and it'll also give protection to the bottom of the table. So I also painted the underside of the top with it. You know, my daddy always said it takes just as much time to do something right as it does to do something wrong. After this, I wiped the entire piece down with mineral spirits to really clean it and get it ready for stain. Plus, this helps any imperfections like swirl marks from sanding or maybe a scratch you missed. This will make them show up so it can be fixed prior to applying your stain. But here is also where I did something wrong. I'd gotten approval from my customer for the stain choice, which was Minwax stain in the color English Chestnut, which looks wonderful. I had my piece and my supplies all ready to go, but check this out. My cell phone died just as I started this step, which I hate because the stain went on like a dream and was so satisfying. Oh well. Live and learn. However, in the end, it turned out very nicely, and I think that my client will be extremely happy with this little table. I will say, and you might notice that I did not show the process of cutting and applying the new veneer. That's because I had never done it before, and it was kind of a comedy of errors, but I got it done and it turned out great. I hope she's able to enjoy this table for many, many years to come.